In negotiating, 80% of the concessions will come down in the last 20% of the time available to negotiate. It's very clear when I do the workshop sessions in our all-day and two-day negotiating workshops that I have one particular workshop. I know that I give them 15 minutes to resolve this particular problem, and we time it. And I can walk around the room and I can see that not much is happening during the early stages of this negotiation. Then I start saying, okay, you have 2 minutes left and you must resolve this negotiation. A minute and a half left, 1 minute left, 30 seconds. And all of a sudden I'll see all these people coming together and making compromises and resolving the issue, because under time pressure, people become more flexible. What does this tell you? This tells you don't reveal your deadlines. If you have a deadline, don't let the other side know. Let's say that you've flown to Dallas for a business meeting and you have a return flight booked at 6 o'clock that evening, and you have every intention of resolving the matter and catching that flight. Don't let the other side know about your reservation. Planes fly every hour out of Dallas. You can catch a later one. You can stay over until the next day. You will stay there until the matter gets resolved, because if you don't do that, if you don't have an open-ended time frame, you'll find they're pushing you against that time frame, doing all the negotiations at the very last minute. Some of my students have told me horror stories about negotiating in Japan, where they will be met in a limousine at the airport. They may be there for a week to resolve this issue, and the Japanese hosts are very gracious and very kind, and they'll take them out to play golf and for dinner in the evening, and which is something the Japanese like to do because they want to get involved with the personalities in the negotiation. They're much more relationship-based than we are as negotiators. But they also push it to the very last minute. Unless you're very, very careful, you'll find yourself in the limousine on the way back to the airport at the end of the week, wrapping up the negotiations, and you're very, very vulnerable under that kind of time pressure. So don't reveal deadlines, but if on the other hand you can establish that the other side has deadlines, it gives you power in a negotiation. Now, you can have a situation where both sides are approaching the same time deadline. A simple example of that would be you lease some of your business property, and the lease is up for renewal on September the 1st. And you hear about time pressure, and you think to yourself, hey, that sounds great. I think what I'll do is I'll wait until the very last minute to renew this lease. That'll put the landlord under the most time pressure to find a replacement tenant, and I'll do better that way. And then you think about it, and you say, well, wait a minute. What's the difference between that and the landlord deciding that he will not renegotiate the lease with me until the very last minute, putting me under the most time pressure to find a new location? So we're both under the same time pressure. We're both approaching the same time deadline. Who should use time pressure? Who should avoid it? The answer to that is that the side with the most power in the negotiation can use time pressure. The side with the least power should avoid time pressure. Well, who has the most power in a negotiation? The answer to that is the one that with the most options has the most power. Options give you power in a negotiations. So you might take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle, and on the left-hand side of the line you put my options in the event I'm not able to renew this lease. How difficult is it going to be for me to find a new location? How expensive is it going to be? Or maybe I can find one for less money. How hard is it going to be to move the telephones and change the addresses on the letterhead and so on? What are my options? On the other side, you draw the landlord's options. How specialized is this property? How difficult will it be for this landlord to find a new tenant? So you list the landlord's options on the other side. Now you've got to do one more important thing. You've got to realize that you always think you have the weaker hand in the negotiations, because you know about the pressure that's on you, you don't know about the pressure that's on them. So you've got to compensate for that. But having done that, if one side clearly has more options than the other side does, they're the one that can use time pressure. The side with the least options has the least power. They should avoid time pressure and negotiate way ahead of the deadline. Another thing about time pressure is that the longer you can keep people in a negotiation, the more likely you are to get what you want. The next time you're in a negotiation, you're thinking, oh, I don't think this is ever going to go together. They're never going to come around to my way of thinking. I got to make some concessions to put this together. I want you to think of the tugboats out in the Hudson River in New York. That tiny little tugboat can move that huge ocean liner around if it does it a little bit at a time. Now, if it backs off and tries to force the ocean liner around, is it going to get anywhere? It's not going to get anywhere. Some people negotiate like that. They get all frustrated, they reach an impasse in the negotiations, they back off, and they try and force the other person to change their mind. Very rarely is that effective. Nudge people around a little bit at a time. You can get them to change their mind. But there's a big caveat here, and the caveat is that the same time pressure is working on you, too. The longer you're in the negotiation, the more likely you are to make concessions to them. You've really got to watch for this, otherwise you'll find yourself giving away all kinds of things you didn't intend to give away. You may have flown out to San Francisco for a big negotiation. You're there at 8:30 in the morning. You're bright, you're fresh, you're eager to get the negotiation settled, but it doesn't go as well as you hoped it would. And the morning drags on, and you break for lunch and you come back in the afternoon, drags on, you're still not reaching agreement. You break for supper, you come back, and the evening drags on. Now it's 10 o'clock at night, and unless you're very, very careful, you will make concessions to them that you would not have made at 8 o'clock that morning, and you will regret having made when you wake up the next morning. Why? Because your subconscious mind is saying to you, oh, I can't walk away from this after all the effort I put into this. I can't walk away empty-handed from this when I've spent all this time and money on this. You should walk away if it's not the right thing to do. A fundamental understanding of decision-making is you've got to make the decision as it exists at that particular point in time. All the effort that you put in to get into that point, all the money that you spent to get to that point is gone. It's gone anyway. That is not good enough reason to pour good money after bad. This is one of the things that makes Donald Trump such a great negotiator. He's willing to pull the plug on projects because he reviews them periodically to see if it still makes sense. He spent over $100 million acquiring the site on Manhattan for what would become Television City. He was going to lure NBC away from Rockefeller Center. He spent tens of millions of dollars more negotiating with the city for the concessions he needed, getting architectural plans drawn for this huge project that would include a 150-story Trump Tower, by far the tallest building in the world. But then he's ready to go ahead with the project, and he takes one more look at it and says, wait a minute, this is not a good deal at this particular point in time. It was a good deal a month ago, 6 months ago. It was a terrific deal 5 years ago, but it's not the thing to do right now. And in spite of all the ego attached to this Trump Tower, tallest tower in the world, he pulled the plug on the project. You got to do that. You got to take a look at something as it exists at that particular point in time. Don't be lured into you listening to your subconscious mind saying to you, I've spent so much time on this, I can't walk away from it. So people become more flexible in relationship to the time that you spent in a negotiation. The longer you can keep them in a negotiation, the more chance you have of getting what you want. But be careful that you're not giving away things just because you have been negotiating for so long. So the second element that always affects the outcome of negotiations is time pressure.
If this clip was of any interest to you, I recommend that you watch the full-length program that has a ton of information that will help you improve your negotiating skills. Tomorrow, we'll go over a skill so crucial to effective communication, Tom Wood discusses it as though it's a superpower, equivalent to being able to fly or be invisible. So make it a great day, and you'll see me tomorrow.